the quadratic formula. Remember, you do not have to memorize this because it's on the EOC chart. If at any time you get stuck with solving a quadratic equation, always refer to the EOC chart and use the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula, and what this means is that each one of these are going to be plugged in to solve for x. B is, remember, the coefficient for the linear term. A is the leading coefficient of the quadratic equation, and remember, C is just a number. Now, let's focus what is underneath the square root symbol. Underneath the square root symbol is called the discriminant, and there's three answers that can come from this. First of all, if we use the discriminant and look what's under the square root symbol, if it's negative, remember there's no real solution. And also, remember it's no real solution if it's negative. But if it is a positive number, then it is a real solution and it has two real answers, which means the parabola crosses the x-axis twice. Now, sometimes you will get an answer of 0. And if you get an answer of 0, that's just going to be one real solution where it crosses the x-axis once. Now, remember, if you do get a negative, the parabola is never going to cross the x-axis. So it does not cross the x-axis if it is a negative number. If it is a positive number, then it does cross the x-axis twice. Now, if you get a special case where it ends up being 0, then that is a special parabola and a special equation, also known as a perfect square trinomial, where it only touches the x-axis once. Now, let's take a minute and talk about this actual problem we're going to set up here. If you notice, I have labeled the A value, the B value, and the C value. And remember, that came from standard form. Remember, A is the leading coefficient, so there's a 1 in front of the x squared term. B is the coefficient for the linear term, and remember, you take the sign in front of it, so it is a -4. And remember, 3 is just the constant. In order to use the quadratic formula, your equation must be in standard form only. If it is not in standard form, then you cannot use the quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and work through this problem. So now what I'm going to do is I am just going to plug in everything that I know. So I'm dropping the B and I'm putting in the -4. Oh, whoops, I meant that to be a -4. Hang on. There we go, -4. And remember that's squared minus 4 times the A value times the C value. And all of that is over 2 times A. Now, if you notice, you really have to know your order of operations here. So far, I have ended up with a +4 right there because a negative times a negative is a positive. So that number on the outside of the square root symbol does end up being a positive number. So there's -4 squared, which is 16. Now let's focus on your order of operations. Remember that -4 is being multiplied by a +1. So a -4 times a +1 is a -4. But we have to multiply that -4 by that 3. So a -4 times a 3 is going to be a -12, and we have to write that as a -12. And remember, all of that is over 2 times 1, which was just 2. So let's continue to simplify what is underneath the square root symbol. So 16 minus 12 is a +4. Remember, that is all over a 2. Now, we have a perfect square right there. So the perfect square is 4. And remember, you have to pull it out by its root. So after I recopy the first part of this quadratic formula as we're working along, I'm going to drop the square root symbol. And I'm just going to write the 2. And remember, all of that is over 2 squared. I'm sorry, not 2 squared, just 2. So x equals that. But remember, this can be simplified. So you're going to have two answers. You're going to have one with the positive root. And remember, you're also going to have one with the negative root. So for the positive root, it's going to be 4 plus 2 over 2. And that simplifies to a 3 because 4 plus 2 is 6 on top. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now let's focus on the negative root. It's going to be 4 minus 2 over 2 this time. 4 minus 2 is 2, and 2 over 2 is 1. So there we have it. Those are our two roots. We're going to write x equals 3 and the 1. That is how to use the quadratic formula. Now, I would like for you to please try to do this one before I show the solution to it.